Alrighty. Well, definitely not as good to do this with a single screen, but I'm on my laptop today and we'll be using a single screen. So I'm going to have to minimize the comment bar and probably not be able to see it. Maybe I'll pull it up later on if I see anything happening, or I don't know exactly how that'll work. We'll find out here. Right now, nobody's in the stream, so most of you may be watching this later recorded. We'll see how this goes. If this works out well, maybe we'll do this a little more often. I don't know. So with that, let's minimize this window and start actually looking a little bit at what I've set up and what I'm doing to try to learn about Proxmox Firewall before actually making a tutorial video. Because as most of you know, or may have learned, I'm actually a machinist. I'm not a computer guy. So virtualization is kind of a hobby for me. And back during the COVID crisis and everything that went on, I decided to start this channel because as I was learning about Proxmox myself, I found a lot of the content either not up to date or challenging to learn. So I set out, with the help of one of my friends, that you'll hear us refer to as Mr. Editor, to actually create some content that better documented Proxmox. I know there's a few other channels now that have done the same thing and made their own tutorials, and some of it's actually pretty good. I like watching it and following through on it. But we're going to continue to try to build this channel. So what I've done here is I've set up, using my standard Proxmox box, a VM, and I've installed Proxmox on it. So we have Proxmox virtualized inside of Proxmox. It's kind of funny. Definitely not probably the best way to do things if you were looking at a production environment. But one of the things we'll be doing today is kind of just playing around and learning about Proxmox firewalls and other things like that, and working through maybe more than one document. We'll see. I got probably about 45 minutes set aside for this, maybe a half an hour. We'll see how it all goes, and we'll see what we can figure out or what I can figure out about firewalls. Then I'll probably take whatever I learn from there and make it into a different, more smooth flowing video. Probably not the same exact video clips. It'll probably be another film, but we'll see how that goes. So with that, here is the install of Proxmox in your standard Proxmox screen. So if you had a monitor connected to your server and you turned it on, this is what you would see after it booted up. And we can go ahead and open a tab and use that IP address that's provided here to open up, or hopefully everything goes all right, open up a another window with our web interface, and then go ahead and log in. I've set up some pretty simple passwords for this because it's basically meant to be thrown away after this video and after we learn about firewalls. So we'll click OK, and let's take a look. I have one article that I pulled up already that I was kind of looking at beforehand. So this is somebody else's article that they've written about Proxmox Firewall and kind of talking about how to set it up and use it. I kind of took a look through it. I'll show you the top of the page so that they get all the credit they need for it, right? Like, it's not my work. And we'll scroll down through here and enabling and disabling firewall at data center, at node, and at VM. VM also, I believe, applies to a container, firewall aliases, and IP sets. All right, so there's a good amount of information here. Let's take a look. I think the first thing we need to do, because I don't believe the firewall is actually enabled at the data center, and I believe the firewall has to be enabled at the data center, at the node, and on the VM or container in order to work. That doesn't mean that you have to have rules at each one of these, but it does mean that you have to have the feature enabled. So if the feature isn't enabled, say at the data center, there'll be no rules actually applied to the VM, even though you configure them and you've enabled it at the VM, because it has to be enabled all the way up the whole stream. So it looks like, yeah, by default it's turned off at the data center level, and we need to select data center and go to firewall and options. So let's first go ahead and do that here. Actually, one other thing we probably should do first, and I haven't done, is actually run some updates, because, updates are important. So as you can see, I haven't even enabled or disabled enterprise. So let's get this thing up to date. So we'll add a rule and a subscription, and then we can go to updates and refresh. All right. And yes, we have tons of updates. Let's go ahead and upgrade this box. All right, and then we'll just stick this over here for now. I don't think we actually need to worry too much. This is a destroyed system. It might cause some problems, but I don't think so. So we'll go to data center here, and then we'll scroll down and go to firewalls. And under firewalls, let's go to options, firewall, edit, and enable the firewall. So that enables the firewall at the data center. Then we're going to need to make sure it's also enabled here at PVE. And again, options. And it is enabled on our node or server. In this case, it's not a cluster, so we just have a single server under data center. And of course, we have no VMs or anything to play with, so let's go ahead and click down the drop down and go over to local, and let's download a container template here. We'll grab Ubuntu. I like working with Ubuntu. All right, so we have a template now. We can create a container and give it a name. I think we can leave all of this the same. It should work no matter what. And we'll fill in a password. Select the template we downloaded. Disk is fine. CPU, memory, network. Let's just set it to DHCP just for simplicity's sake here. And DNS, this should be all good. Confirm it. Alrighty. So we have a container, and right now in this container, if we went to options, there's no firewall. So that's kind of the default configuration for our container, right? Like there's no firewall there, so information can come freely or leave freely, and we really can't do much about it. But we can go ahead and start this container up, and once we get that running, we can open another console version, and updates are finished on the system, so we can go ahead and exit that. And as always, root and the password that you set up during the configuration of the container. So we have a container here and it's running. We can look at the IP address here and see that it's 65, but really, I mean, we could try to SSH into it or something, but we'd have to probably configure a different user account or something. Like SSH doesn't normally work with root. So we really don't have any way of like seeing if the firewall is working. I guess we could set up like a drop all rule and see if we can do updates or something. But I wonder how many updates are even up for this image. We did just download it. All right, so we got a good amount of packages that are available here. Let's server. And I always forget the right spelling of this, so I like to copy and paste it. Let's go ahead and install a web server here. Give us some way to interact with this container and see if we actually are able to stop traffic and also have traffic flowing, right? Like we can use the apt update command to see if it updates, and that'll tell us if traffic's going out. And we can also use the web server for some like incoming traffic, so we can see if the rules that we created somewhat work. Like this isn't going to be the most secure implementation of a firewall, but I didn't really plan tonight to be a secure implementation of a firewall, more like just learning about how to interact with Proxmox's firewalls. Firewalls, at least for me, can be fairly daunting, and I actually try to avoid them most of the time because configuring the rules and such are somewhat awkward. But with that being said, they're very essential for systems, especially in the DMZ zone, for security, but also behind your router. Like your router's probably got some implementation of a firewall, and that's really what creates the DMZ zone, right? Like the system's in front of the router, and it's in a zone where there is no firewall. But even that, secondary firewalls can add to security. We can control traffic coming in and out of each container and lock the containers down so as we interact with them, or if somebody did get into a system, they can't get into other systems using something like SSH on port 22, or I mean, we can also change SSH to a different port, I realize that, but we can block that port too. So say only a single system has ability to talk to the SSH port on a container set up through the firewall rules. Like we can do that here and help dramatically decrease the footprint or exposure zone of a single VM or even our Proxmox server. Yeah, with that, it looks like we got a web server up and running, and I know I did run an IP address command before, but it looks like my DNS server, or DHCP server, sorry about that, has assigned us a IP address of 65. So if we go here, we try to go here, yeah, see, we get the Apache default page. For tonight's presentation, this will be fine. It'll tell us if we're working or if we're not working. Like, that's all that matters. All right, so here we've already gone to data center, and With the data center, we've gone to options and we've turned on the firewall there. There's a firewall enabled here under options as well for our node or server. And here it's turned off. So let's go ahead and first enable it for our container. Now there's no rules set up, so I don't expect, even though we've turned the firewall on, for any change in behavior. But let's go ahead and run that update command and see if it works. Yeah, it's definitely still working. It's showing 21 packages can be upgraded. And if we went over here and did a refresh, I'm pretty sure this will refresh, although I'm not sure because that's not working. So we might be right now be blocking all incoming traffic. That's probably what's going on. Let's say we can try to load it again, but I don't think that's going to make a difference. Yeah. So it's not loading. So if we went back to Proxmox, right, and went to options and edit, and we turn this off and hit OK, then we came back and we stopped it and we loaded it. Yeah, there we go. So just really kind of 65, there it goes. It loads. Alrighty. So, excuse me, I'm going to take a drink. So we know that when we turn the firewall on at our container, it actually does block all incoming requests, but it doesn't seem to be affecting outside requests. Obviously, we're not doing a lot with this container, so maybe that's only on certain ports or something. Like, we'll have to play around and kind of learn about that or see if there's some other documentation. I only quickly skimmed this article and a couple others before going into this, so I could basically decide how we were going to work along with this video. But we can go ahead and press edit and turn that firewall back on now that we understand that behavior a little bit more. So going back to our article here, we turned it on at our VM or our container here. And all right, yeah. And that's showing that we can turn it on at the other screen under advanced, I believe it is. Yep. All right. So aliases allocate IP addresses, so we can kind of give a name, so we can like have pre-configured IP sets that we log in for rules. So it just makes configuring things a little bit easier. I think it might actually be essential for configuring things the way the web interface is built, but we'll get into looking at that here in a minute. Creating firewall rules. All right, so this tutorial is going to set it up so you can allow inbound traffic on 80 and 443, which 80 is definitely standard web page HTTP. I think 443 is HTTPS. 8080 might be HTTPS as well. I'm not sure there. 22 is definitely SSH. And we're going to allow outbound DNS traffic to internal DNS server on LAN. I don't know if we'll play around with that, and then we'll block all all other outbound traffic. Well, it might be fun to play with a block rule and look at that and look at how it might affect things. So let's continue on here. All right, so they're going to set up an IP alias at the data center level. And so That looks like something we can do here. I know if I scroll down, their names and configurations are shown. So we can definitely give it, we can copy and paste their name, right? And yeah, let's go back here and go to data center and then go to firewall. I think we need to start with IP set, not alias. If I add, yeah. So we'll give it a name all, and I think this one for our network is all 10 based IP addresses, and the subnet mask for that, or the CID, is going to be -8. Most of you are probably dealing in the 192.168 range at home or with your network. I have a lot of different weird things going on here because I just play with things. And I've chosen a subnet mask that's necessarily probably quite a bit larger than I need, but it just lets me play with certain hardware and different things that makes it easier for me anyways. So we're in a -8 here, which will cover any 10 range subnet mask. I mean, this is a subnet that, or network size that's usually something of like a college level, right? Like it's huge. So anyways, let's click add here. Now, you may want to go through just like they have and block the 172 range and the 192 range, and so that any traffic, like if somebody gets in and creates a custom IP address on your network in or a hold of your Proxmox server and creates a container with a different IP address in like 192, your firewall rules won't work, right? It'll kind of let them go around, and they can then maybe use SSH or something to get in. Of course, if they're into your your Proxmox server, they probably can use your console environment or something. I don't know, like there's tons of scenarios, but you probably do want to block that and stop somebody from using a technique that I've heard referred to as like IP hopping or whatever, where you just change your IP address to that of a different VLAN or a different IP address and see if that opens up other ports. Sometimes that's a valid tactic when you're in somebody's network. I've read a little bit about that here in my studies. Anyways, so we created that. Now, I think we need to do an IP set and create a rule, and we'll just call it all 10 here. And then if we select this rule and hit add, yeah, see, then we add that in and we can create. So that's the IP set, right? Like, so if you wanted to create an all local IPv4 range, like, or all private IPv4 range, you could go in here and you could create each one of these independent rules, 10, 172, 192, and then you could create each independent one as well, just like they have set up here in this tutorial. That's valid. I'm kind of looking to only interact with this container and only do some small tests to see how things work tonight, right? Like, I just want to learn about the firewall. I haven't really played much with Proxmox or set it up at all ever. So, yeah, it's kind of the point here tonight, right? So, going back up through, we set up our alias and stuff. I think we're ready to try to create a rule. Let's look somewhat what they've created for a rule here. Okay, so this is the rule, or this image is the rule for incoming traffic on 80 and 443. So going back here, and we can click on our container. There's really nothing we have to do on the server as far as any of this. It doesn't even look like we may have options. Well, we have firewall options for rules themselves, but no options for IP sets or aliases or anything. That's kind of like a global data center applied thing here. All right, so back to our container and our firewall. You notice I've left this container running. We'll see if we have to reboot it or anything, but I'm expecting that these firewall rules will just apply as we do things, right? Like, I don't think that we're going to have any issues with firewalls having to have a restart to apply or any of that. We'll find out, right? We'll see what happens. So right now, we have the firewall turned on, and we learned that that meant that we couldn't get any traffic in and or into this container, but traffic could go out of the container. So if we go here and we try to reload that same web page, it won't load. It just sits there, and it'll just sit there and try to load and go back and forth until it times out. So, all right. Now, if we come in here, and we should actually be able to make this port 80 rule, right? Like, I installed Apache. It's not configured up with HTTPS. It's not anything. It's just a default install as plain and vanilla as it absolutely could be. And with that being said, we should just be able to turn on port 80 and see that web page load. So let's take a look, and we hit add in. So traffic coming in from the outside, not going out from the server, accept, and then the source or the IP address that things are coming from, let's set to the alias of all 10, which we decided that was anything with an IP range starting with 10. So over a full Class A network or CID notation of -8 range. Destination, I think that's pretty clear here. We could set it up going anywhere, and that might be important if we were working on a node or data center level here, but destination for this is just going to be this container, right? Like, that's where we're setting it up. We definitely want to enable it. And source port. So we can set a source, and I bet dest port is the destination. So if we just set this up to port 80, we could try add 443 in here. I think they did that by adding a comma. Yes, they did that by just typing a comma and 443. I don't think we need it, but here. And we can give it a title. It's kind of good to get into the practice of labeling things. It makes it, when you go back, easier. I don't know, whatever you want to call it. Like, it's up to you whether or not you even use comments. So if we click add here, oh, we get a thing. It looks like we need to give it a protocol. So if I remember right, this uses TCP traffic. So let's select TCP. I don't know if we can also select UDP. No, it looks like we have to select one or the other. So we'd have to make, if we wanted to allow both TCP and UDP traffic to port 80, which I don't know if there's any scenarios where you want to do that. Maybe DNS. I think DNS maybe, depending on if it uses DNSSEC or not. I'm not sure there. That's a research for another day. You can always drop it in comments and let me know if you want. Save me some time doing reading if I get around to it. So, but I'm pretty sure we need TCP here. So we're going to hit add, and our rules added. And because we clicked apply, when we were in this window, or enable when we were in this window, it comes pre-checked. But if we uncheck this, the rule's not active, or if we check it, it is. So if we come up here and refresh now, this should, I believe, allow traffic coming in. Well, it might be because it failed. Interesting. Let's come here and look at it here real quick. I'm pretty sure we're not using that port, but maybe we are by default. No, doesn't look like we are. All right, we run that update. Again, I don't really know what I'm doing here. Like, I've played with this a little bit, but haven't really done a lot. So we're that's the point of tonight's video, is to read about any of that. Let's look at the web browser, see if any of you guys have left comments. All right, no comments here, but looks like we do maybe have one person viewing. All right, yeah, all right, cool. So with that, where do we go? TCP. Oh, it looks like they didn't configure a source at all. Let's try that. All right, so edit, exit, no source. So we're going to accept in traffic. We have these ports. Yep. Alrighty. So let's try that. No good either. Well, I don't know. Maybe we need to do a reboot? I think this makes a difference. Really don't think that that'll help. All right. So let's copy this rule. And let's just keep it accept and going out. So this should allow traffic to come in and go out. Not still working. Alrighty. Yeah, they did set up TCP here, so that rule looks like it should be set up. Interesting that we can't use it. We know we're blocking all traffic because when we turn the firewall off, it works. So that's cool. Let's remove this out again. I don't think we need it. And let's see about that drop traffic rule. Drop, going out, destination, I believe, is all. Yep, destination is going to be all. Ports, I don't think we need to configure, and we need to enable it. Yep. So this rule should cause this whole thing to break, right? Like there should be no traffic that's able to leave this container at all. All right, and drop rules always go at the end. All right, so let's try running this now. Yeah, all right, so the drop rule worked. See, it's going to fail out. And it'll keep running through all of them and failing, I believe. Let's keep looking and see if we can figure out what's going on with this first rule so we can get this web server working. Still not working. Expect it to be. Alrighty, so in accept protocol TCP, no, and destination port. Alright, so let's edit this. It looks like it's the destination port is the problem. See, these are actually failing. See, that instead of hit, they were ignored. So that tells us that we actually were able to drop traffic. But it looks like source port here should be destination port. So with that, let's go back and see what happens. There we go. So we got it working. Yeah, let's see. Kind of interested. I don't have a way of really testing SSH, unfortunately. But if we look at here at the port 22 configuration for incoming accepted traffic, they actually put just a source. So this one IP address is all that is allowed to talk to that. It's kind of interesting. I mean, we could play with that a little bit here, making rules, right? Like, if I other I forget the command here. I think there's another way to get my IP address. That's simpler. Yeah, so my computer's 12. Alrighty. So if we were to go ahead in this rule and edit this rule of source, we could type in 10, 10, 2, and my computer's 12, so let's just enter 13, right? So this rule worked, and we were able to load this page. So now when we create this rule, we've changed the source IP address to an IP address other than our computer, and not given it like a TCP range, a subnet range. So this should ban any computer other than 10.10.2.13 from actually loading. Let's see what happens here. Yeah, looks like it. And just to verify, because sometimes browsers do weird things, let's close it. And we've loaded 65 a few times, but it doesn't seem to be showing up. Yeah, it's not loading. And this over here is still having problems. So we can actually do something fun here and show that that rule can be unchecked and like updates can be done. So if I actually press Control C, terminate that command, and then I came back and I just unchecked that, I believe that that command will run fine. No more rule. Yep, and there we go. And it ran fine. No errors, no problems. It just ran, right? Like, so we're definitely able to block traffic. And this isn't loading, so we're definitely like blocking traffic here. If we edit this rule and we actually use that alias, that all IPv4 or all 10 that we set up right here, right? This should then load because my computer's in a 10 range, right? There we go. It loaded. All right. So one last fun check. Let's try. Make sure we don't have any odd errors and it works. There you go. It works. Well, I think we learned quite a bit tonight. It was like a 45-minute video here. Let's see if you guys have any comments or suggestions of other things you'd like me to live stream about, or even videos. I'd love to hear from my viewers a little more. I want to start interacting with you a little bit more and learning more about what you like, right? Like what you want to see and what you don't want to see, and how we can better teach you about virtualization, Proxmox in general, because it's really my passion. I love Proxmox. I absolutely love Proxmox. It's one of my favorite sets of software here, and it allows me to do so much with experimentation and learning and other things, just like we did here, right? We virtualized a version of the operating system itself and was able to actually go through and learn about it and test configurations without messing up our server, without messing up anything we had running on it, any other applications or programs or cloud-based things or VPN services for cell phones or whatever it is. We were able to actually go through and learn about setting up firewalls and test this. Like we made a second container. You do, when you install Proxmox on top of Proxmox, get an error message about virtualization not being able. You kind of just click OK and continue on. As you can see, we were able to run a container just fine. Doesn't really seem to affect that because the CPU actually still does support it, right? And Proxmox is kind of what they call a KVM style hypervisor, and it's really heavily based on the kernel that's there for the operating system. So I hope you guys learned a little bit, and if you're new to the channel and this is the first video you're viewing, I hope you take the time to like, share, and subscribe to help us continue to grow, like help us continue to learn and develop and do that type of thing. Anyways, have a good night.